your name will be shown in the Teams, like it will be shown as an attendee. So if you want to rename, please go ahead and rename your name to any person. That's all good. Welcome to the Dynamics 365 User Group India. I welcome Anita, who is today's speaker, and this is the session number 40, which we are going ahead today. Um, as the group you know, it has been led by Rachit Garg, who is an MVP. This is second year of his MVP, and Anita is been recently awarded as an MVP as well. She's her first year. Going forward, I also introduced Deepak Agarwal. He's also an MVP from last 5 years. Umesh Pandit, as you know, and Satya Kejriwal, sir, he's in Sydney. So myself, Rachit, sir, and Satya Kejriwal is leading the group from Australia, and Deepak Agarwal is heading the UK. So basically, we collectively ask people to volunteer in this group. If you want to have some sessions from your end, you want to give your session on your topic which has been relatively known to you, then you are welcome to contact us, either me or any of the volunteers who are listed here. These are our Twitter handles, LinkedIn, and YouTube channel. So this is our YouTube channel. This is the past sessions which we have already delivered successfully. Today's session is all about the evaluating the Dynamics 365 finance and operation with your powerful extensions. And the speaker is Anita. So I will hand over the floor to her to deep dive the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Umesh. Thank you, Rachit. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody present here. Thanks for joining the session. Let me share my screen. Rachit, if you don't mind, I will go off from the camera because the bandwidth is just fluctuating here.
Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Do you see my screen?
Yeah, yes, we are.
Yes, Anita, it's visible.
Yeah. So the agenda for today is just a quick intro about me and then the extension because we are already familiar with this topic. So I will just give a quick refresh of about the extensions in various AOT artifacts and how we can use the flexibility for the effective solutioning. And there are some interesting topics on the disposable context, sys extension serializer map, and the interaction class, followed by some quick tips which I have kept in the last slide, just sharing as a part of my learning, followed by the Q&A session. Aita Ishwan, I think I am anyway familiar with you all. I have 18 plus years of experience in Dynamics 365 operations, specializing in technical development and integration. So throughout my career, I had the privilege to work with various challenging projects, so which has helped me to hone my skills and deepen my understanding on this dynamic field. In recognition of my contributions to the community, I have been honored with the MVP recently. In addition to my hands-on work, I am also an active member and where I usually post my updates in my blog, where I have given the details. Also, I have given started sharing the updates on the newsletter as well. So I hope you are all following the newsletter here. So just I look forward sharing my knowledge with you all today, and I hope to engage in the enriching discussion that will help us to grow and excel in our respective roles. Anyway, D365 FNO extensions, just a quick recap. So why we are doing the extension, this is because we are going to customize and extend the system. So what is customizing extending the system is, it is just to meet the specific business need without the need for compromising the core functionality. Because even if you do any extension additional requirement, it should the core functionality is retained. So in this way, it will help you to tailor the system to the unique process and the requirements. So it is not only that you will be modifying the existing functionalities, adding the new features or changing the user interface. So that is as per the which best fits your business operations. So based on that, we can tailor it. And we can also make sure it is upgrade safe because we keep getting multiple updates every now and then, right? So we need to ensure that the customizations do not hinder the future system updates, because the customization has to remain intact, correct? So whenever the system is updated or upgraded to a new version, thus there should be minimum, there should be no distractions or disruptions on the need for rework. And it also ensures the seamless integration. For instance, anyway, FNO is already, we have multiple, we will be able to integrate FNO with various external systems, right? So even if you extend or do any additional customization, the integration is not affected and you will have a seamless integration as well. Scalability. So this plays a major role here. By using the extensions, the business can also scale the ERP solution as they grow, because new functionalities can be added incrementally, right? See, the functionality what you have in the current system may change in the future. So we should also accommodate the incremental changes without overhauling the entire system. So in that case, scalability also plays a role. Compliance. So we need to make sure the extension helps the business to comply with the industry specific regulations and standards by allowing the addition of necessary features and functionality, so to meet the legal and regulatory requirements. So this is one of the key feature here. Preservation of the core integrity, of course, because extensions, as far in FNO extensions, we are not going to touch the core application code, right? So the integrity of the core system is also preserved. Thus, the system remains stable and reducing the risk of any new bugs here. So how do you unlock the flexibility with effective solutioning? We need to follow few best practices to give an effective solutioning with our extensions. So we should understand the architecture, get familiarized yourself with FNO architecture and the underlying model. Because if you are making some change in one of the standard table, you should make sure what are all the other underlying tables are affected and whether the existing process is also shattered there. So that should be kept intact, right? So we should understand the architecture before making any changes here. And we should also have that maintainability. Sorry, you should also have the best practice, follow the best practices, because that would ensure the extensions are maintainable, upgradable, and it can perform well. Because this point I have already explained it in the previous slide, just a recap of this. And you can use the extension point to leverage that, such as events, form extensions, table extensions, etc. So anyway, we are not going to modify the standard application code, but your extension should be compatible here. Performance consideration is also already discussed, because when you make any change, you should have the data, because every time it should not hit the database always, right? Because that would have a performance impact. So we should make in such a way that it will be helpful in efficient data retrieval and processing. Documentation. Document any change, whatever we are doing, so that in future it will be helpful to refer. For example, if there are any issues or if you want to refer why this has been done, a proper documentation would help the user to refer and get the details quickly. Upgrade path, of course, there should be a future upgrade, and any updates or upgrade to the existing FNO environment. The extension should also be flexible with that. Testing. So as a part of our developers, this one, you're also doing unit testing, correct? So we should also have a negatively impact. It should not negatively impact the existing functionality. So you should thoroughly test the end-to-end test cases whenever you do any extensions. And security, which is already discussed as a legal and regulatory requirements. Version control. So it is better to maintain the version control here, because this helps you to manage the changes in your code, right? We can easily track the modifications and you can coordinate with the developers. And user experience as a personalization, because here you will be able to modify the user experience as per the business need. I know we are all from the developers background, but since I am giving you a quick recap of what the extension is doing in our case here. Let us start extending. Okay, base enum. So the base enum property, the is extensible property decides the base enum, whether it is extendable or not. So if the base enum is, okay. So if it is not extendable, if the is extensible property is false, then you will not be able to extend. Otherwise, we need to request a change to Microsoft to make the change there. Otherwise, we need to create a new custom enum here. Then for example, in FNO, nowadays we don't have the integer enum value here, because enum values are usually undeterministic. When you sync the enum, the existing enum will have the numerical value generated in the backend. But for the new extended enums, they are undeterministic. So that is the reason it is always recommended not to have any range comparisons with that integers. For example, greater than 1 or less than 1, or any query ranges should not be done with the integers, enum values here. So that is one of the practice which we need to incorporate. And the best practice, we should always have a descriptive name so that we'll be able to track. It should be user friendly. Like we don't need to have go and see the documentation why this has been created. So the name what you are giving should be self-explanatory, and you should have a proper label and help text. As I said, it should not compare the enum value to the enums to the integer value in our code, because that is not a best practice and it keeps changing whenever we move across the environments. Having the config key is also one of the good solution if you are using a ISV solution here, because you can turn it on and off based on the config keys what you are setting up against the particular enum or any artifact in AOT. But only thing, we need to put the system in the maintenance mode, and then you will be able to active or deactivate the config keys. And the switch blocks. This is one of the main point we need to see here. If you are adding any new enum in your existing enum or a standard enum, make sure that is referred in any of the switch blocks, because if you have a default case where this is not referred, then we need to make sure you need to extend that particular switch block and then include your enum value also with enum validation also there. Otherwise, that might have some negative impact. And documentation is always necessary. In case of EDT extension, as usual, we'll be able to extend the label and the help text. You will be able to modify the label, help text, form help, and the string size. So if you're asking if the EDT is referring to the previous EDT, the parent EDT, then in that case, you will not be able to modify the current one. So it is advisable to make change in the parent EDT, and then that will be reflected across the child EDTs here. So also, for instance, then also you need to consider whether this would have any other impact in the other processes, because changing the EDT size, it will have the impact across the other processes as well. So that we need to check. And also, we cannot decrease, for instance, in the case of string size, you cannot decrease the existing EDT because that would lead to truncation of the existing strings, correct? So it is always recommended to use the new string size, which is equal to or greater than the base EDT. And even you have in the decimals, if you want to extend the decimals, it is possible only when you have the number of decimals is extensible property is true. If it is set to false, then you will not be able to extend the decimals. And even for the decimals also, you have this principle where you have few decimals where the parent decimal EDT can be extended, which will be automatically propagated to the respective child decimals. So we have few things called as amount, width, length. All these are all the decimal EDTs, right? So that we need to make sure. A separate Microsoft link itself has been given for this EDT extension, especially for the decimals. So in case if we have a requirement where we are asked to extend the decimals in an EDT, we should always refer to that Microsoft link and get the details properly. So the best practice is it can be defined only on the root EDCs. The extends property, it cannot be changed during an extension, because you have an extends property, right? That cannot be changed by an extension. So if you have multiple ISVs, so for instance, I am using an ISV and there is another ISV which is also extending the same EDT. Then in the backend, you have the EDT model ID, the model ID based on the highest model ID, then that will be reflected. So also see if you, instead of extending the existing EDT, see if you can create a new one where you can derive it from the existing EDT. So in that case, you will have the flexibility to edit more properties than using the extension approach. So this is like, it comes like whether it is where we need to decide whether the existing EDT can be extended or a new EDT can be created. So here we need to decide. That depends on the ask what we have at that time. Table extension. So in the table, when you extend, it is possible to add fields, field groups, methods, and even the methods can be extended. But here you will have a BP. The best practice when you have more than 10 fields in one of the extension. For instance, if you have 10 fields, then you will have a BP. It is not going to stop your customization, but there will be a best practice automatically popped up when the field count is more than 10. Either you can split in multiple models, but there is also an extension. There is also something called as sys extension serializer map. So this framework, it is especially for the table framework where it will help you to extend the additional fields without without having this BP issue. Let me dive more into that. I have taken the example from the standard itself so that you will be able to easily refer in future. Take an example of sales table. The one which I have highlighted here, sales table underscore W. It is the extension table which uses this sys extension serializer map. First, we need to add the relation with the sales table. Add the relation and where you will be able to specify the on delete, the related table and the cardinality. What is the relation type and what is the role? All this we need to mention. And after this, it will automatically create a field in the child table. So this relation is in the child table. And upon adding this relation, the field will be a new field on the sales table will be automatically populated. And if you want to add any further fields here, you will be able to add the fields here. So this is what, for instance, if you try extending and adding 10 fields, then that will give you the issue, right? The BP issue, right? But in this case, you can add any number of fields in this new table. And go to the mapping node. And here, this is where this is extension serializer extension map is added. So here, then you will be adding this base rec ID to the sales table here. So the sales table here, you are giving a relation with the sales table with this new child table here. This is via the mapping. And if you go to this extension serializer map, you will be presented with these many number of methods. These are all the inbuilt methods, the standard methods, which you will be further extending, which will be using in the future in the child and as well as in the parent tables. So these are all the standard methods which we have in this map. How is it implemented in the child table? For instance, if you have this insert method, okay, so this is happening during the insert of the sales table, the new table here, you are calling this method, the serialization extension map, you are calling the base table. So which means that whenever there is a new record inserted in this parent table, base table, this is automatically populated. So this is, for instance, in this approach, it is called via the insert method. So if you see during the insert, this particular method is called here. And vice versa. It is not only in the child table. So what happens? What if you don't insert if you don't balance this method in the sales table, then it will not work. So even in the source table also, you need to give that is extension enabled and you need to call this insert after base table. So here you will be calling this is extension serializer map here, where the parent table is also given a reference to the child table here. And for instance, in this case, you are going to use in case of child in this parent table, here you will be using an insert method where the map is passed here using the post insert method. So this will automatically propagate all the changes, whatever you are doing in the sales table, it will be automatically propagated to the reference will be automatically added to the child table as well. So, and also you will have a new field called as packed extension here. This is a container. So that is also referring to the sys extension serializer map. So this will be automatically, this has to be created and with the EDT of this type, sys extension serializer map. This is a container field here. And you need to also pack. So in case you need to pack the contents and then pass. It is like you can compare like how the values in the parent table will be passed to the child table. So that is via the pack extension. So all these methods, if you see, it is only using the out of box methods what is being defined in the mapping. If you remember, I have given you a screenshot of that map, right? So these are all from that map only. So via this only, there is no additional customization. So via this map only, the map and the methods only, we are going to extend all this. And then we are also going to return it. So this is just, I have given a screenshot of what, I mean, this framework is already existing in the standard. So I thought I can share it with you, but this will take some time to implement. I had faced some issue. I mean, I had faced some challenges when implementing for the first time. But then once I understood the complete picture of this, then I was able to implement it. So don't lose hope when you are unable to succeed it during the first time. So I am sure then once it is done, then we'll be able to implement it fast for the further customizations. And the table extension, the best practice is any new methods or the standard methods can be extended as far as they are public and protected. As you all know, the private method cannot be extended. And if you want to have some additional methods, overloading. So for instance, during your implementation, you need to have some additional parameters in your standard method. Then it can be as disposable context can be used, which I am explaining in the next coming slides. And then hookable attributes in the methods. It's not only in the table methods, even in the class also it is applicable. So it decides the extension. If it is false, you will not be able to extend it. Private or internal method cannot be extended. And make sure the naming convention is properly followed. For instance, if the same table is extended is in multiple models. So this one is an extract from the standard. So how the model name has been binded with the extension. So that naming convention has to be followed. So they will not have any conflict when you are compiling the code and deploying to the other environments. Form extension, as you all know, there are various ways we can extend the form. Either you can extend the form data source using the init method or validate. It is not only restricted to any of these methods. So in any way you can form, even a form control also you can extend and add your additional code in that. And even the form data field string also you can do if you want to have any additional validation on top of the standard validation in the particular data field. Even that also we can add it. Form extension you say for the list page. So anyway, list page, it is not you can customize the list page in various ways, but one type which is good at the moment is the interaction class. This is already in AX 2012. This is not something new to us, but since we were using that EP, then interaction class were useful. But still, via interaction class, if you are able to customize the form list page, then it will be the best way, because every list page has an interaction class, because that is where any of the logic is associated is placed. And you can handle various events and action on the list page. Like for instance, if you're initializing the page, or if you're what happens when you go out of that list page and what should happen during that event, all this can be handled using this interaction class. I have taken a standard example only. For instance, if you take the perch table list page, here you have perch table interaction list page here. And this is where in the enable line update methods here, this is called here. It is extended with perch table interaction, the extension of the perch table interaction class. And for instance, if you want to do some action visible or enable or make it editable, then you can use it via this extension. And for instance, I have given a list of perch table interaction methods which are available out of box. We can extend it in case if there are any ask where we need to tweak the changes in the list pages out of box, then all the list pages in FNO will have an interaction class. So this is the best place where you can make your changes. And then this is also one of the recommended approach. I am not saying the other approaches are not fine. This is one of the recommended approach. And the form extension here, the best practice is, because here the unique name, it minimizes the risk of practice, because if you are working with multiple model, with a single model, it is fine. And if you're working with multiple models, you need to make sure a unique name will minimize the risk of conflicts, because when it is anyway advisable, you do a get latest whenever you start your development, right? So during that time itself, you'll be able to see if there are any name conflicts, the system will automatically pop up. The build will not be successful for you. So for instance, you can have that name, for instance, vendor group, when you're creating some extension for the vendor group for a model. So you can give it as vendgroup.xxx model.extension. So you can make it like that, so that conflict can be avoided. You can either include the name of the model or the prefix the extension is associated with. I have given a screenshot from the standard itself, where the HCM worker to form is being extended across the same model, see application suite, but it is extended for different properties here for payroll, retail. So how this is named, we can see it from here. So I have taken most of the screenshots from the standard, because what I do is whenever there is any issue, I will go to the standard code and then check whether what I am doing is fine or not. So that is a reference for me to make I am doing a proper approach here. Class extension, you can extend the class, but the global variable values can be utilized in extension. So only thing you can use the global variable values when you extend a method, but as you all know, the local variables cannot be accessed, right? So in that case, either local variables, as we cannot access, then we need to bring a separate variable for that similar to it, and then we will be continuing with our logic. You can either use COC or event handlers. And I had told you something about the disposable context that I will be explaining. So what happens during the disposable context? Disposable. So this itself, it says releasing the unmanaged resource, right? So will be creating a class. When a class implements this disposable, then it will provide the dispose method. It is like you are going to, it is like an interface where you will be implementing few of the methods there. For instance, the dispose method, it comes as a part of this one when you implement this. So as soon as the method is done, the process is done, it will automatically free up all the resources, such as any database connection or any file handles. Even if you're creating a new parameter as a part of your process, that will all be released. So which makes the original process is intact. It is not disturbed at all. This makes sure that the resources are properly cleaned up when they are no longer needed, especially because that is needed for maintaining the application and performance, right? So that is where the disposable context is here. So we had a similar requirement in one of my assignment where we had to add one of the additional parameter in our report for the customer aging report, where we had to add one additional parameter. And during the construct method, during the new construct method, we need to pass the additional parameter, and from there we were able to pass this parameter. So this is how a class is constructed. If you see, it is a new class is created. It is called, it ends with reporting context, and it implements system.idisposable. So these are all the set of methods which is as a part of this interface. And if you see the dispose, so as soon as this method the process is completed, the resources are released here. So this is the purpose of this dispose. And here, in case in my requirement, since we had to capture one of the parameter, so you need to identify where this parameter has to be captured. So since we are running a report, we captured this parameter during this process report, because during the process report only we had to do all these changes. So during the process report, then we call this report context. And then from there, we did further changes to make it as per our ask there. But using this disposable, what we made it like, for instance, if your class is taking, the standard class is taking 3 parameters. So using this disposable context, we made it accept 4 or 5 parameters, additional parameters, and then it was disposed by end of the process here. So that is the funda using this disposable context. The best practice here is you can start the name as usual. The naming is always plays a crucial role in any of the extension here, because for instance, if you take the standard class naming conventions here, it is always prefixed or suffixed with the model name followed by the extension, even if it is an event handler also. So make sure the naming conventions are followed properly. For instance, COC, the Venn group. If I am extending a Venn group for one of my model, then it should be Venn group.xxx.extension, xxx extension. So in this way, the conflict in the extension can be avoided. Usually, the chain of command is recommended more than event handlers. Event handlers, I am not saying that event handlers is not recommended at all, but usually COC is preferred, because event handler, during the maintenance or during the upgradability, if you change any of the parameters in your standard classes, then it is difficult to capture during the event handler approach. So usually COC is recommended. And data entity extension. So as you all know, new data source, we cannot add it in the existing standard. Even if you extend, you cannot add any new data source. Also, I have noticed if you have created a OData action in the data entity extension. So OData action, I have already written a detailed post in my blog. So if you are using if you are creating a OData action in the data entity extension, it will not give you any issue during the build, or even during a deployment. It will not give you any issue, but only thing, you will not be able to consume that OData action in the external source. For instance, I tried creating a OData action in my data entity extension, and I didn't get any issue during the build phase, or even after deployment also, I didn't get any issue. But only thing, I was unable to, the system is unable to interpret what that OData action is. Then later I found it is because the Microsoft doesn't support OData action in the data entity extension. So then we had to create a new data entity and then do all this OData action there. So the overall best practices for the extension is minimal intrusion. So we need to minimize the impact of the core system, right? Because it has to be compatible with the future updates. And also the documentation for all the customization is always recommended because that will be easy for maintaining and troubleshooting. So whenever you are doing any additional customization as a part of our best practice, it is recommended to document it somewhere so that it will be helpful for future reference testing. So we need to test the extensions thoroughly in the development environment, even in the test and where development environment usually might not have any integration connectivity, right? So in that case, if you deploy it before production, if you deploy it to any other environment where the integration is enabled, then we can test rigorously so that we can identify if there are any issues due to this extension. So also be cautious when we are using the event handlers and avoid redundancy. So mainly we should avoid redundancy and promote the reuse. So how if you are using the same model across the same model logic is used in the other model, then we need to see how this can be extended. So rather than redundant code, we need to see how this can be reused. In case of event handlers, so usually heavy operations, we cannot use it in the event handlers because the maintainability is tough. So usually such heavy load scenarios are not recommended for the event handlers. So in that case, we need to see if the COC can be handled here. We have almost reached the end. Wanted to give you a few tips because I keep receiving some LinkedIn messages on how to keep ourselves updated in this, because every day we are getting some or other updates, right? So I keep getting the LinkedIn messages, how to keep yourself updated. So thought I can share it in our wider forum here. This is the favorite rule I have. So if you spend 100 hours a year, which means you're only spending 18 minutes a day, you will be better in any discipline because that is a consistency. What usually I do is we will be spending 15 to 18 minutes every day for learning something new. You will notice a change. See, as a part of our work that is different, you will learn something. So even from that also, try to learn something new so that it adds to your learning. See, Microsoft Learn. If you want to learn something new, for instance, you do not have some idea on one concept, reach out to Microsoft Learn because that is a repository where you will get answers for all your questions. Even if you want to start something from the basics, Microsoft Learn is there for you to reach. You go to Microsoft Learn, search for the topic, you will get right from the basic till the end, you will be able to get an idea of what that particular concept is about. So I always recommend Microsoft Learn for any of your if you want to learn something new. Spread the knowledge. As me and Rachit usually speaks, we will be even in one of our session we discussed how do we share and spread the knowledge. So via sharing and spreading the knowledge, what you will know, you are not only going to share, so you will also learn something new when others give some comment on your post also, right? Because that will be a kind of discussion. So in that way, you will be also active on community. When you share and spread the knowledge, you will be active on community like be in the LinkedIn or blogs, watch or give webinars, write or read the newsletters. So in this way, this is the best way where you can keep yourself updated, because this I have learned it on since I was getting so many requests on that. I thought I can share it in the forum because it will be helpful for others also. And check the community forum regularly because there are so many questions which are posted in the community forum where you will learn a lot. We will be thinking it as, okay, maybe I might not learn, I might not know. But if you go and check that forum, there are so many questions which have been posted from by our fellow members. From that, you can learn a lot. You will keep yourself updated if you keep an eye on the community forum. Just 15 to 20 minutes a day is enough from our regular routine. That is what I usually do. Thank you, Rachit. Any questions?
Thank you, Anita. Let me see if we have any questions.
We have
Great
few
session.
questions we have been trying to answer. Maybe we can ask Anita and she can share her views. And if anyone else has any views, feel free to share. Yeah, Umesh, you want to continue?
No, I think you can take a lead. No problem. All good.
Okay. Interesting question on model ID. So you mentioned that comment about the model on the highest with the highest ID gets the priority at the runtime. So there was a question on how do we identify the highest and lowest model ID?
No, from the AOT, you will not be able to identify. There is a method where you can write, and then using that method, you will be able to find which is the highest. I mean, the model here is you will be extending, right? So the model, so which model has the highest value via that function, you will be able to get it. But from the AOT property, you will not be able to get this one.
Yeah. So it's also tied to layers, right? So if you are extending a model which is on a var layer versus you are extending a model which is on cus layer, then of course the models at cus layers will always have the ID higher than the models at var layer. All right. There was a question around in what scenarios might rec ID values cause conflict during integrations and how can these be resolved effectively? So I added my view that rec IDs go along with table IDs, but happy to have your views on it, Anita.
No, usually the rec IDs, on what basis the rec ID would cause conflict here, right? Usually it will be unique, at least in this one, right? The legal entity specific. So I just wanted to understand how the rec IDs can cause conflict here. I didn't understand this question. It is usually it will be unique, right, Rachit? So there is
It's
no
unique
chance it
for a
will have a
table.
conflict.
It's unique for a table as per my understanding. So rec ID is unique for a table. So different tables can have same rec IDs. So it's if you look at any standard behavior, rec ID is always in conjunction of a table ID. So if you combine table ID and rec ID, you get a unique record across the whole database. But if you just say rec ID, then how will you even find it? You need table ID to find the rec ID, right? Yeah, so that's my view. There was in AX version, I think 3 or 4, rec ID was unique across the whole database. I think from 2009 it got changed when it was for a table. Maybe other experts can add, Adri or Mohan sir, if you want to confirm it. But yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, Rajat, I believe you're right. Rec ID can be repetitive. So better to use along with the table ID and rec ID. That's the best and safest way.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. There was question on build server. Without build server, can we create deployment pipelines in DevOps with Azure Git configuration? So we have shared some blog links. Adria needs to blog on it now, but Adria has shared a GitHub repository link where the Microsoft pipeline sample is available. But yeah, you can use Azure hosted pipelines. You want to add anything to that, Anita, on using Git DevOps without a build server?
No, nothing much from my side, Rajit. You have covered it.
Thank you. Okay, maybe this one is for you. How do you handle field mapping when integrating D365 with an external system that has a different data structure? Any tips for ensuring data consistency?
Either we need to bring the middleware in this case where the data structure is mapped. For instance, if we are getting the data from the Salesforce, so that will be in the different, even the structure is different, right? So here either you need to transform it to our readable structure of FNO. So either we need to bring a middleware in between where it translates, for instance, customer account number in the Salesforce is a customer account in FNO. So that mapping has to be done via middleware only. So that is where the field mapping has to be done here.
Yep, same views. Cool. I think there's one last question from Anirban. Is there a good documentation for the SIS extension and SIS plugin framework? I want to know about limitations, best practice, effective use cases. It's a full session on this topic, mate. So yeah, SIS extension, SIS plugin. You want to say anything on that, Anita, in a brief way?
Maybe then I will be able to share the documentation what I have read earlier. Maybe then I will share it here, Rachit. That might help here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these are big topics, so probably you'll have to look at the standard code references, how it's used. Both the frameworks are used for extension. So SIS extension and SIS plugin both can be used to extend the application. So maybe try to look at standard references. If you have any specific question, post it on the Dynamics community forum. You will be able to get attention of the whole community, and people can share their experiences on where they are using these frameworks. Cool. I don't see any more questions in the chat window, but if anyone wants to discuss any question or wants to unmute and say something, feel free to do it. We have some time.
Yeah, so we have actually finished the session probably 20 minutes before, but we'll keep the forum open to ask any live question and answers. So definitely we can discuss. Rachit, would you like to continue the recording or should we stop? How do we take this?
I'm fine. Like we can record it for people to listen afterwards.
Correct. Yep.
So
no
that
problem.
it helps wider community. Those who are not able to attend can listen, and
Sure.
maybe someone else has similar questions. So make the best use of it, guys. We have people like Adria in this call, so it's very rare we get their attention. So feel free to ask anything which is bothering you in X++ world.
Yeah, one quick question. Let's say we have the number of decimal one field which is having a 2 decimal point, but customer wants their 4 decimal numbers. That particular field is using an ADT which is non-extensible, right? So in that case, how we can perform this?
You have an example, like what's the use case? Which type of field is it?
There is one field which is I think supplementary amount or something is there, supplementary item in the supplementary table. So which is having a 2 decimal point, which is given by Microsoft already. But as we are migrating from X2012 to FNO, right? So in X2012, it's very easy to add the 4 decimal points directly. We can go and edit it. In FNO, we can't do it directly, right? And the ADT which is having the property set is no, is extensible property, set it to no, right? Now, if we create a new ADT and assign it, then it will be a huge impact on the code, classes, data entities. Lot of things are there, right? It will get impacted because it's a standard table. So this requirement, how can we achieve?
Yeah. So if you have a very solid business use case backing up this request, I would open an extensibility request with Microsoft and let them evaluate and open that particular data type for extensions in the future releases. That is one option to explore, because like we are our hands are tied because of extension framework. But that's why I asked you what's the use case. Microsoft does understand and considers these type of requests as long as you back it up with a solid use case. If business needs it, yes, it can be considered.
Yeah, but I just afraid to raise it to Microsoft because like 2 years before I raise a request, and still that is not recognized by Microsoft. No response, nothing is there. So I thought, is there any workaround that we can do?
Kishore, you can raise it in the insider program where we have the YAML group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There also you can post it at this question. Probably they will consider this within the Microsoft ecosystem product team.
Okay.
Workaround is create a new field, try to feed it into the places you want and build your own logic.
Yeah, new field we can create, but problem is that then I find the references, all the places I have to replace the field, and it's a huge task for me, right? For maintenance, for even in future. So that's what. Yeah.
You have to take some tough decisions, mate.
Yeah.
No, but Kishore, don't judge the response from Microsoft, which happened 2 years before. But now it is like, even if we raise the extensibility request, they are responding immediately. If you give the proper business justification that this has to be done, then at least they are responding and see whether that is possible or not. In our case, in our projects, I have seen 2-3 cases where it was accepted and they have released it in the future builds. Even that you can try.
It's
I
all about
completely
how you
agree with
raise
you,
that
but I
request,
kept
right?
this option as the last option. After trying everything, if nothing is possible, then I will raise it to Microsoft.
Yeah, no, that should be a first option. See, you have
Oh,
to
okay.
formulate your request in a way by talking about which industry needs this, which client needs this, and how, like, you have to create that need in the industry for that requirement. That will get
Okay.
attention from
Okay.
Microsoft. If you just say, hey, I want to extend this EDT and make it 4 decimals, probably it won't
Mm.
get accepted unless you justify the need with the business
Okay.
requirement, with the industry requirement, with say, okay, I have customers who need this and it's very critical for the product to survive in this competitive world. That's how you need to raise your request and get some attention. Otherwise, yeah,
Okay.
catch a flight to US, go to
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
office.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. 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 Agree. Thank you.
no worries. All right. Any other question? There is a question: how to handle internal use only BPs when we use SRS proxy for getting SRS report bytes. We get BP as it's marked as internal use only. And thanks, Anita, for the great session. So, yeah, if you are getting this BP, which is marked as internal use only, it's not recommended by Microsoft to extend such methods. Probably, yeah, I think it needs a deeper discussion, Anirban, maybe post it on forum so that people can understand what you are extending and why you are extending this. So if you are extending it for getting SSRS report bytes, yeah, maybe check standard code references how they are doing. If you still feel that something is going to replace it, then maybe raise a support ticket to get clarity. But as a best practice, again, it's not recommended to extend methods which are marked as internal use only, because it can break in future releases. No one can guarantee backward compatibility on such methods. That's my view. Happy to get others' view. Right. Any other question, feedback, comment? Can we integrate AX2012 with Power Apps? Why not? You can, of course.
Yes, yes, you can.
Your
So
use
what's the
case, Satish?
use case?
Yeah.
Yes, I was same thing. Use what's the use case? Okay, anyone more want to ask any question? They can unmute themselves. They can ask the questions by unmuting themselves. Vikas has asked the question.
Is there any way to modify the created by and modified by field once value inserted in the table? Why would you like to do that? I mean, you can have your own custom fields where you can have any values, but created by, modified by are all kernel fields. I don't think you can.
Modified by field will be usually gets
It
updated
gets
whenever
automatically
we,
updated.
yeah, that
Yeah,
at least, but creator
yeah,
by it is a
yeah. I mean,
system field, right?
if you can do that, you lose that whole integrity on this field. You know, it's a very important field in auditing the system. I am not aware of any way to modify it once it's created. You can add your own custom fields. Yeah, that's my view.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Thank you. Thanks.
I mean, question from Soren, maybe this was answered previously. Using sys extension, is there any considerations when referring added fields in code of forms, etc.? So I'm not getting that question properly, but I think once you have added the field to a table via extension, you just refer it via the table object. You don't have to declare the object of the extension. You just say sales table and you do dot. You get the added field in the lookup. Is that the correct interpretation of your question, Soren? Otherwise, feel free to unmute and elaborate more on it.
Hello.
Yeah.
So, hi. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, all right. So, thank you very much for the great session once again. I just have the question because I heard that you people were talking about integration of Power Apps with EX 2012, right? So, uh, what do you suggest is the best way to go about this? Because we know that there's no default cloud integration for AX because it's an on-prem software. So, could you just help me out in this regard?
Yeah, see, my view is it will be all through the custom services which you have to deploy on AX 2012 environment. So even though it's on-prem, AX 2012 has its own integration framework where you deploy services using that service nodes, and I think it supports uh, the X uh, the XML format. The SOAP-based integrations are supported in AX 2012. So what you will have to do is your Power App can talk to AX 2012 via those APIs. It's not as smooth as FNO because FNO has things like business events and you can embed the Power App within the UI. Those capabilities won't exist, but still you can trigger the CRUD operations or custom business operations using the web services on AX 2012. I think it was called WSDL, WSDL contracts, which you can create on AX 2012. Has been long since I opened that application, but if any application has API or integration frameworks, you can definitely use Power Apps on it. Yeah, others feel free to add your views.
So you can
Okay,
build up the custom
thank you.
connectors as well. Okay. And like a feature like Power Automate. Okay. So you can use for approval processes, Power Automate can be integrated with the custom connectors as well.
Okay, yeah. So the original approach which I was planning to go with was after the creation of a service and a service group in AX, and then I was planning to use it to Postman for the API service. So we'll have to like he had said, like instead of WSDL, usage of some of the API services would potentially be useful. But yeah, thank you for the advice.
Right.
That's it. Thank you, Umesh.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Cool. Yep. Pretty much on time. Anyone else wants to unmute and say something? Otherwise, yeah, happy to wrap it up. Thanks, Anita. Nice session. Some great tips. Something which we
Rachit.
take for granted while doing development because then we focus on the core objective. But then, yeah, these best practices definitely help us to make our solution more effective, efficient, scalable. So thank you for that. There's a question from Rajeshwari. If we don't have relation between table and view, if I try to physically link the table and view, what are the prerequisites has to be followed? I'm not able to understand the question. Maybe uh, so view is made of multiple tables, and what are you trying to achieve here? You can declare an object of view, so you don't really need to link a table with a view to do any runtime operations. Maybe if you can elaborate more, we can share our thoughts on it. Or maybe just look at any standard references of how views and tables are used in code. I would just declare an object of the view and just use it if I have to just extract information.
I have to eliminate the zero records in the custom entry form. Am I audible, Rachit?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I have to eliminate that zero records, amount to pay zero records in the custom entry form. Um, the behind table is stands open, and we are not getting the zero, but the zero records are in or related to spectrans table. Uh, in order to remove that zero records, I have created a view based on query using custans open and spectrans, and using non-exist join. I link that view with the execute query. Like we already have that query to load the transactions. So I added this query and view to the existing query.
So you want to select records from which table? Custrans or spectrans?
Custrans open.
Custrans open. And you have a way to find the matching non-exist join in spectran. So if you don't use a view, are you not getting that record? You just use not exist join and give your conditions? Because you want records which are in custrans and not in spectrans based on some relations, right? So just using not exist should be enough. Like you can send me your queries. I can share my email. We can discuss in detail if that helps. But from the high level understanding, it looks like a not exist join clause which you need to use in your query. I'm not sure why you need to create a view for that.
Okay.
I'll share my email address with you. Just send me some more details. Yeah.
Thanks, Rachit.
Cool. Sorry, it was for this. There is from Sunil. You want to export records from voucher transactions. When you are doing in standard export, it is failing. What are the ways to export in Excel? Which version are you using, Sunil? Maybe you can use DMF, create your own custom query or export process, write an X++ job to export data in CSV file. There are many other ways, but yeah, I don't know how you are currently using. Are you just using right-click export to Excel?
Hi, Rachit. Yeah, we are just using this standard functionality, export to Excel from the build way.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no data entity for, I'm sure not for voucher trans, but maybe you can ask if you are only using for export scenarios, try to either filter the records based on some conditions and export them in chunk if you want to do manually. Otherwise, ask your developer to create a new data entity. But that should only be used for exporting the data because it's a transactional data. So you cannot expose it as for any create or update or delete operation. So it should only be used for export. Third way is you export this to Synapse Link, and then from there you write something in Fabric layer to export it out. But yeah, unfortunately, not an easy way out here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
It depends on how frequently you are exporting also, right? Whether it is a one-time export, okay, we can think of creating a simple entity and export. But then you need to see whether your use case is a frequent export or a single time export.
Yeah, it is actually frequently used by the client for reconciliation, month-wise and year-wise, YTD. They are doing it. But the records are very large to export in Excel from the. So we are also checked that is there any standard functionality to do it, but there is none to get it.
But the voucher trans keeps growing, right? This transaction table. So ideally, it is not a good approach to export all the data from the table always, correct? You should have some kind of filter also to export it.
Actually, basically we are using the parameters for the accounts and the date filter. These two for specific accounts we are exporting the records.
Right. So if you want to do manually, maybe reduce the period time. So maybe if someone is doing it, do it for 1 week at a time and try to export it. Otherwise, develop a custom process to do it. Like you can have something which writes a CSV file to a blob storage every day in a batch mode, something like that.
Okay.
Cool, guys. Okay. Yeah, just to,
Thank you for.
No worries. All right, guys, we are just coming towards the end. One last question: how to get to know the execution sequence of multiple extension classes for a single class? Tricky one, Ahmad. There is no guarantee on the sequence of execution of extensions. That is why we have to create them with very precision and making sure that there are no dependencies in these extensions. They can execute in any sequence. That's my understanding. All right. Cool. Thank you. Over to you, Mesh.
Session is going to end today now. Yeah, so it's just on time. I think we are good to close this session. And I also received few messages on LinkedIn for thanking Anita. They were in rush, so they left the meeting and then they said thanks to Anita, Rachit, Deepak, and everyone for attending the session. So it was really a great session today, having full insights of the extensibility of the X++ code. So I'm also gained some knowledge about it. So thank you very much, Anita and Rachit.
No, thanks to Anita.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Rachit
doing it.
Umesh. Thanks to the
Yeah.
group for hosting me.
Thanks
Thank you.
for
Yeah, welcome.
doing the session.
Thanks all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a
So
good day all.
next
Bye.
next sessions are still not out. I will or Rachit will be posting soon when the sessions new sessions is being arriving. Okay. Thank you very much. Keep you
All
posted.
right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So bye bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you,
Bye.
team.
Bye. Thank you.